Hey everyone, it's Allie and welcome to my channel, and today I'm super excited to share with you some of my favorite thrillers that I've read over the last few years. Alright, so I have been really looking forward to making this video for you guys because I have come to just really love thrillers no matter the time of year. I've been a reader pretty much since I was born, but I feel like I didn't really dive into the thriller genre until I kind of rediscovered my love for reading just a few years ago after I finished college and grad school and all that craziness, and I had time to actually read again. So when I was a kid, when I was in middle school, high school, I did read a lot of like fantasy and literary fiction, and I still love to read those genres, but I feel like thrillers for me have really become the books that I'm always in the mood for. They're so cozy, they're so fast-paced, and I feel like, and I've said this before, I feel like for me they are what romances are for other people. A lot of people love to pick up romances just as an easy, quick escape, and that's how I feel about thrillers. But since I've read so many thrillers over the last few years, I figured I would pick out about 10 books. I think I ended up with 11, but I wanted to let you know what books I recommend, so if you are overwhelmed and you want to pick one up this time of year, hopefully this video will be helpful to you. So what kind of ended up happening when I was looking at my read bookshelf was I just kind of picked one book from a lot of my favorite authors. So this is basically like my favorite book from a lot of popular authors right now. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first up, I have Ruth Ware's The Turn of the Key. This was actually the first book that I did read from Ruth Ware, and unfortunately, in some ways, it has been my favorite. I feel like a lot of her other ones have kind of let me down a little bit. She's an author that I for sure will always pick up, but yeah, when I first read this book, I thought she was gonna be one of my new favorite authors, but the other ones that I've read from her, I just did not feel like were as strong as this one. So the main character, Rowan, is presented with an opportunity that is too good to pass up, a live-in nanny post with a staggeringly generous salary. And when Rowan arrives at Heatherbray House, she is smitten by the luxurious smart home outfitted with all modern conveniences, by the beautiful Scottish Highlands, and by the picture-perfect family. What she doesn't know is that she's stepping into a nightmare, one that will end with a child dead and herself in prison awaiting trial for murder. This was a book that I absolutely ate up, and that's going to be true for really all these books that I'm talking about today. But I just remember when I read this for the first time, probably a couple of years ago, I just was like totally engrossed in the story, and the ending had me absolutely shook. I did not see it coming. And this is like a very isolated type of thriller. It's set in the Scottish Highlands. I think it's raining pretty bad for a lot of the book, so very, very good, I think, to read this time of year. So I have read, I believe, a total of 5 books by this author, and this one definitely was my favorite. Next up, we have Alice Feeney's His and Hers. And Alice Feeney is kind of similar to Ruth Ware, where some of her books I feel like are just so much stronger than other ones. You might have heard of one of her most famous books, Daisy Darker, and that one to me was actually the most disappointing because I guessed the twist like page 2, and I am not someone that tries to figure out twists or wants to figure out the twists. But yeah, the whole time I read that, I was like, if this is really how it's gonna go, I'm gonna get so irritated, and that was really the only thing that was a big surprise at the end. And so since I really saw it coming from the beginning, I was not as impressed with Daisy Darker. She's also written Sometimes I Lie, I Know Who You Are. I might have read both of those as well, and they were fine too, but this one was for sure the one that stood out to me. I really like this book because it's following 2 perspectives. One's a man and one is a woman. So we're following newsreader Anna Andrews and then also Detective Jack Harper. So the first half, or maybe even third of the book, they're kind of doing their own timelines and then they end up converging. And this was another one that I just was so interested in. I really loved the writing style of this book. I feel like this one was written weirdly better than her other ones. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure this one does have a little bit of domestic abuse in it, so if that is a triggering topic for you, then you might want to pass on this one, but it is a really good book. Next we have The Silent Patient, and I can never say this poor guy's name. I think it's Alex Michailidis. He is from Greece, and I'm sure you've heard about this book. It was everywhere when it first came out, and it was like an instant bestseller, and I probably didn't read it until like a year after it came out because I was really resisting all the super famous book talk books. But this is one that I really do think deserves the hype. Super well written, and I did not see the ending coming. I've seen some reviews where they did see the ending coming. So yeah, if you knew what was going to happen, you would not enjoy it as much, but I was really surprised by it. And he has written 2 other books, and both of them I bought like immediately, read them immediately, and this one has remained my favorite, but I will say all 3 of them are very good. But this one I think is super fun because it is psychological, and I'm a psych person myself, so I found that very interesting. And it also does have an unreliable narrator, which I think is really, really interesting when you are reading a thriller. Now we've got the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and I was not quite sure about this book when I first started it because it is one you have to really pay attention to. There's a lot going on and there's a lot of characters, so if you are just looking for a quick and easy thriller to like read in one night, this is not going to be your book. But if you want to read a story that is so well written and super engrossing, I would highly recommend picking this up. It's not historical fiction, but it kind of gives that vibe, very much like Downton Abbey type setting. And I really liked the uniqueness of this story because it's kind of like Groundhog Day, where at the beginning of each day, the main character Aiden wakes up at Blackheath House in the body of a different guest. So he's reliving the same day over and over again throughout the story, but he is waking up as a different guest, trying to figure out who murdered Evelyn Hardcastle. Out of all these books, this is the one that I feel like I'm most likely to reread just because there is so much going on, and I feel like even reading it a second, third time, I would still be picking up on so much stuff. Like The Silent Patient too, this was this author's first book, and also like with that author, Alex Michailidis, I have picked up everything Stuart Turton has written, and this has remained my favorite, but all of his books are really, really well written and interesting. Next we've got My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing, and I'm pretty sure this is actually the only book that I have read from this author, but I was super impressed. I picked this up on Book Outlet probably like a year or so ago. Wasn't sure what it was going to be about, but I was really pleasantly surprised. This very much was like American Psycho vibes. So if you like that movie, if you like that type of setting, then I would definitely recommend checking out this book. Okay, now we've got my favorite from one of my favorite authors. She very well could be top 5 favorite author for sure, maybe even top 3. And that is Miss Lisa Joel, who I only really discovered last year with this book. So yeah, as you can see, I did get this from Book Outlet, but Lisa Joel has a huge backlist. She's probably written at least like 10 to 15 books. So I believe I have read 6 from her at this point, and I really liked every single book. Like I could have had all 6 books on this list of my favorite thrillers. But this one I do think was my favorite. It was a toss-up between this one and Invisible Girl. But yeah, this book was everywhere last summer, and rightfully so because it is super, super good. This story follows 2 birthday twins, 2 women who were born on the same day, who kind of just had a chance encounter at a restaurant, and then they formed a little bit of a relationship, a little bit of a one-sided relationship. And we've got an unreliable narrator in this story, so the whole time you're reading it, you're not really sure what's going on, and this is another one I think I would definitely reread. But truly, you can't go wrong with really anything that she's written. Another thriller that totally blew me away last year was Riley Sager's The Only One Left. And this is for sure one of my favorite covers. I love this cover. It is perfect for the vibe of this story and perfect, I think, for Halloween. This would be fun to display for the season. And this is one I definitely read in one night. I read a lot of these in one night, but I totally ate this book up. So this book is set mostly in 1983, which I love. I love thrillers that are set in like the 80s and 90s especially. There's just some kind of like eerie vibe about that time period, I feel like. So set mostly in 1983, but it is talking about some murders that happened back in 1929. So you're flashing back a little bit to that time period. And the setting of this book is absolutely amazing because it's set in Maine in this big house, and this woman is working there and she knows that there were murders that occurred at this house, and she's just finding things out throughout the book, of course. And this ending had me absolutely shook. I was not at all all expecting what was coming, and I'm pretty sure there were like many levels of twist to this story, so if you do happen to guess the main plot twist, there's going to be other things that you probably did not see coming. I think I've read maybe 2 others from Riley Sager, and I really enjoyed those as well, so he is for sure a top thriller author for me. So a lot of the books that I've talked about so far are decently dark, but if you want a little bit more of a lighthearted thriller, a little bit of a cozy mystery, then I would recommend The Maid. This story follows a really quirky main character, Molly the Maid, and she's got a little bit of social issues. She struggles with kind of social awareness throughout the story, but it's just very charming. She's a very likable character, and she is an excellent maid. She takes her job super seriously at the hotel that she works at, and there is a murder that occurs in the hotel, and Molly the Maid finds herself swept up in the case. There actually has been a sequel release to this book. I think maybe a 3rd one is coming out as well, and I will say I much preferred this first one to the second one, but overall I feel like the series is just really cute. So if you're looking for something a little bit more lighthearted, I would definitely recommend this book. Now we've got The Golden Couple by actually 2 authors, Greer Hendricks and Sarah Pekkanen, and I'm pretty sure they both write on their own as well. I do have another one by both of them on my TBR that I'm really excited to get to, but this is the only book that I have read by them so far. And this was one that amongst the many thrillers that I've read, I feel like really stood out to me. It is well written, and the story I just feel like was super interesting. It's just the classic thriller of you're finding out more about the main characters throughout the story, you're finding out about their secrets. And this particular book I thought was interesting because it's following a golden couple, a very picture-perfect couple, but of course there's going to be lots of secrets underneath, and you're going to be finding out everything that they're lying about throughout the story as the book goes on. So we're following this perfect couple, mostly the wife, and then also the therapist that they end up going to. Just a couple more, and next up we've got The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda. Megan Miranda is funny because she was one of the first authors that I feel like I really read when I was getting into thrillers. So I think I've read at least 6 of her books. I've read pretty much every one she's put out, and they're all good. Like all of them I feel like get 4 stars, 4 to 4.5 stars. But this one I think stood out the most to me. This was definitely a 5-star read. Another beautiful cover, gorgeous book. But this one I thought was so fun to read because it is following some survivors from a car crash from when they were in high school. So a decade before the book is set, there was a car crash on a high school trip, and multiple classmates and teachers ended up dying. A year later, one of the survivors dies by suicide, and the rest of them make a pact to come together each year to commemorate that terrible night, to keep one another safe, to hold one another accountable, or both. So we're following several of these survivors throughout the story while also finding out what really happened the night of the crash. So if you are looking for a book by Megan Miranda and are not sure which one to pick up, this is the one that I would most recommend. And then last but certainly not least, we have Miss Gillian Flynn, who is probably one of the best authors in the genre. Unfortunately, she's only written 3 books, I think, and I frequently look online to see if anything is coming out from her soon. And I think maybe I did see that she is working on something, but yeah, she is such a fantastic author. I think right up there with like Stephen King, just so talented. I had a really hard time choosing which one I would share with you as my favorite, but I think Gone Girl is just such a unique story. You may have seen the movie, you probably have already read this book, but if you haven't, I would definitely recommend reading this even if you did already see the movie so you know what happens. Both the movie and the book are really well done. But yeah, it's sad she hasn't written more, but she is absolutely a queen of the genre, and you gotta pick up her stuff if you haven't yet. But alright everybody, those were some of my favorite thrillers that I've read over the last few years. Basically my favorite books from a lot of popular thriller authors. But let me know if you agree with my choices. Let me know what your favorite books in the thriller genre are. Especially if you love an author that you don't really hear many people talking about, I would love to hear about them. But if you like this video, please make sure to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help my channel out a lot. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!